Hello friends of Oak Hills, this is Pastor Dale coming to you for our weekly video Touchpoint. Today is Thursday, June 16th. This is part 8 in our deep dive into humility. This article is titled, A Theological How-To. Last week I began to answer the question, how does one grow in or develop humility? I brought us to Jesus' call to become like children in Matthew 18 verses 3 and 4 as an answer to that question. As I thought more about that call, I think we can call that the relational how-to. We grow in humility when we see ourselves in relationship with God as children with a loving, gracious, and holy Father. Like children, we are utterly dependent on God for everything. When we live each day with that relational perspective, we grow in humility. Today, I want to answer the question with a theological how-to. Our knowledge of God and His ways directly shapes and develops our humility. A.W. Tozer opened his book, The Knowledge of the Holy, by stating, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. He builds the case that what we think about God shapes and impacts every area of our lives. John Calvin opens his Institutes of the Christian Religion by stating, true and sound wisdom consists of two parts, knowledge of God and of ourselves. He wrestles with what comes first, knowledge of God or knowledge of self. He ultimately concludes that knowledge of God must precede proper knowledge of self. Therefore, we grow in humility when we deepen our understanding of God and His ways. Let me touch on some of the highlights of this theological know-how or how-to. Number 1, contemplation of God's majesty and creation humbles us. David writes in Psalm 8, verses 3 and 4, when I look at your heavens, the works of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him? Number 2, beholding God in His holiness and glory humbles us. When Isaiah saw the Lord sitting upon a throne high and lifted up, and he hears the seraphim calling out, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of His glory. He humbly responds, woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips. As Calvin says, we must infer that man is never sufficiently touched and affected by the awareness of his lowly state until he has compared himself with God's majesty. Number 3, a growing understanding of our sin and God's grace humbles us. Paul reflects on his own testimony when he says, I am the least of the apostles, unworthy to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. 1 Corinthians 15, verses 9 and 10. Number 4, a deepening recognition of our inability to do anything to save ourselves humbles us. Paul writes in Romans, for by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight. Then what becomes of our boasting? It is excluded. By what kind of law? By a law of works? No, but by the law of faith. It's Romans 3, verses 20 and 27. Number 5, a satisfaction and resting in the riches and sufficiency of Christ humbles us. Paul makes a comparison of his worth with Christ's worth and concludes, whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ. Indeed, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. From Philippians 3, verses 7 and 8. And number 6, depending on Christ for everything humbles us. Jesus plainly says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. John 15, verse 5. I could go on, but the point is clear. The more we grow in our knowledge of God and His ways, the more we are humbled before Him. The more we know God, the better we understand our utter insufficiency and inability. Calvin writes, indeed, our very poverty better discloses the infinitude of benefits reposing in God. The miserable ruin into which the rebellion of the first man cast us especially compels us to look upward. Thus, not only will we, in fasting and hungering, seek thence what we lack, but in being aroused by fear, we shall learn humility. If you are not growing in your knowledge of God and his ways, you are not growing in your humility. The study of theology is essential for our spiritual lives. Or as Tozer says, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. Well, friends, I just have a few items to highlight this week. First of all, I want to encourage you to be thinking of and praying for our women. We have a group of women in Indianapolis right now attending the Gospel Coalition Conference for Women. And I'm thankful that the women have an opportunity to glean from this rich conference. I know some women are taking advantage of the simulcast who are still here. And then a group of women are planning to get together for a watch party on Friday evening to watch Nancy Guthrie. So just be praying for our women and the richness of that teaching that they are availing themselves of, that would be a blessed time. And of course, as our women are blessed, our church is blessed as well. Secondly, I want to just highlight some summer gatherings for our whole church family. I encourage you to mark these on your calendar right now so you can be available. On Saturday, July 16th in the afternoon from 12:30 to 4, we are invited to enjoy the beach at Lake Quivira. Stu and Leanne Terry are going to open up the opportunity for us to come out to the lake, to the beach there on Lake Quivira. And it's a bring your own picnic lunch. And there's lifeguards on duty. So it's a fun day for the whole family, for the whole church family. Plan to come and join us on that day, Saturday, July 16th for the afternoon. And then we have another church picnic at the end of the summer. So Sunday, August 28th, we will have a church picnic following the worship service at West Flanders Park. So mark your calendar for those 2 dates. Those are our 2 church family gatherings and an opportunity to enjoy the summertime with one another. Number 3, I would ask you to be praying for our General Assembly. Our denomination is meeting next week in Birmingham, Alabama. Some 2,300 commissioners. These are teaching elders and ruling elders, or as we know, pastors and the sessions of churches. From Oak Hills, Bill Burns, Brett Willoughby, John Lee, and myself are attending in Birmingham. So pray for our safe travels and pray for our denomination as we wrestle through various issues that are facing us in this current cultural situation, and pray that we would be wise and diligent for the sake of the gospel of Christ. And then fourth and lastly, we just continue to invite you to be praying for our Sacred Road missions team. This is our missionaries of the month. They will be traveling July 2nd through the 9th to serve with Sacred Road on the Warm Springs Reservation. And this Sunday, June 19th, we are receiving a special offering as an opportunity for our church family to support the team. So if you'd like to contribute to the financial support of the team, you could give in this offering, or you could give at any time using our online giving apparatus. There's a pull-down menu to select Summer Missions Fund, and that will go to the team. Or anytime you give in our offering box, you can just mark a note in the memo what portion or if what part of the check is going towards the Sacred Road team. So thank you for your support, and thank you for your prayers for us. Pray that you're having a blessed week and finding some cool spots in the midst of the summer heat. And we look forward to being with you soon. God bless.